So welcome back to another video. You may not know, but what I'm trying to do is get my goldfish to breed. So I'd love to actually breed some Joaquin goldfish. We've got some really nice examples, and I've never done it before, but this is my chance to try and make it happen this spring. Spent a while building an extra pond and ready for the fry, setting some tanks up. You may have seen some previous videos of that. But what I did to, try and get them to breed, I guess, is every night I would make sure I'm feeding quite a lot, really. I do only feed once a day, which I know is not going to be helpful, but I had some leftover peas here from my daughter's dinner, so I thought always going to make sure they've got enough protein. Pea protein is good, eat their veggies, so take off the shells, which you've probably seen before, and I always just crush them between my fingers and then throw them in when they stop going for them, and I won't put any more, and I don't want them to just sit at the bottom. But this video is all about what is about to come up and actually what's now happening in the pond. So you can see here, as I was out, I can see there's a little bit of chasing going on. Not much, there's a little bit there, and to be honest with you, that white ranchu, I'm still not 100% sure if it is a female because it keeps getting chased, but it's never produced any eggs. I haven't seen any milt either from it, so it probably is a female. But when I noticed that chasing, I dropped in these spawning mops, or cheerleading pom-poms, which I'm going to use as spawning mops. Now the problem was, obviously they just floated on the top, which maybe that's fine, I'm not sure, it's the first time I've done it. So what I did was I wanted to attach them to something, and the only thing I had was some extra airline tubing and the weight on the sponge filter that I always have in my indoor pond shed to make sure it's always one there cycled, really. But that meant it did sink. It sank very slowly, but I hoped what that would happen was it would leave, create an area for the fish to swim up against and spawn on. So there's what may be the female, and the next task was to get the ranchu, because the whole idea was to originally, I should have said that at the beginning, was to breed the top view ranchu. I kind of switched between the Joaquin and the top view ranchu, which ones I was going to really try to breed this year. But I thought, well, I've seen that female being chased. Let's pop in the rest of the fish, which I think are males, and let's see what happens. And as you can see, not a lot happened there. I don't know whether it's because of their age or something, but I thought what I'll do is I'll get things ready. I will start to spray the tank, give it a bit of a clean. It'd been sat there for a while. This is a second-hand, I think it's about 3 foot by maybe a foot tank that I wanted to just have ready if I needed to get any eggs from any of the fish. So again, this is another occasion. You can see there's a little bit of following going on, a little bit of chasing. It tends to be after a water change when the temperature has changed in the pond. And those two fish are the fish that I really want to breed. The female at the front, the male at the back. Keeping an eye on the indoor pond as well, seeing if anything's happening, but not much. A little bit of following now and again, that's about it, but nothing major. Looking nice and clean though, actually, that pond, which is something that it doesn't often look like. It tends to act a bit like a sump, this one, inside the shed, and collect detritus in the bottom. It's just something I may look at changing in the future, whether I'm gonna keep this pond. I don't know, let me know if you think I should change that. But yeah, so we've got the that tree here, which someone did in the last comment let me know what it was, and I've forgotten again. Sorry about that. But yeah, a few days later, after me watching the pond like I normally do after I come back from work, I saw that things hadn't changed a lot, but this is just the time moving on to make sure that I wanted to basically keep on top of the feeding, keep on top of the water changes, and I was hoping that by really feeding quite a lot, that would stimulate the fact of the spawning. Now I have heard as well that separating fish is one thing you can do. So separating the males and the females would allow them to potentially get I don't know, frustrated in some ways, so they can eventually spawn when they're together. But lots of bloodworm is something I've heard is a good idea as well, so I did feed lots of bloodworm. Now, one morning, sun was shining, very windy as you can see, but I did notice some action. There was some stuff going on in the pond. It had taken a lot of prep, a lot of conditioning, getting the fish to feed a lot, making sure the water was perfectly clean. They probably would have bred anyway, but I thought I wanted to do my bit and help out. You can see here it did become, well, you see in a minute, it became quite, vigorous really. There was a lot of fish going for this female, and I thought, this is my opportunity really. These are the fish I want to breed with. And I looked around the edge of the pond and there was eggs. Brilliant. Exactly what I was after, and there's quite a lot of eggs as well. Algae, another story. Blanket weed was off and on, whether it was in control or not, but we had a little bit there. But yeah, loads of action, and it wasn't just the big metallic female. We had the calico whacking goldfish here as well, being chased. So she was obviously full of eggs as well, which, I wanted to breed the metallic fish, so that's what I did. The best way I thought to do this was to take some pond water, they're already used to it, pop it in the tank that I'd cleaned out, you'd seen before previously, and to pop inside at first, I thought, let's put these spawning mops in. That's what I bought them for. I didn't buy cheerleading things for any other reason, but I bought them and I thought, let's bowl up the two fish that I want to spawn. So starting with the female, the male, I managed to eventually get them in the net, and I took them over to the tank. But yeah, so that's the male there, absolutely lovely fish. So very carefully I bowled him up, and it looks even nicer, to be honest, in that blue bowl. That's why I bought it. This is like an extra large washing up bowl that I found on eBay or something. Not as expensive as a koi showing bowl, but it was that similar blue. So anyway, popped the male into the tank, and didn't want the water level too high. I've been doing a bit of reading about keeping goldfish eggs, and I know that eventually when they hatch they need to swim up to the surface, so I just kept the water level quite low. Same thing for the female. She does look large in that video, you can see, so I thought she must be full of eggs, and turned her over to have a quick look to see. Sometimes they come out when, as soon as you touch them, they're kind of, the pressure on the stomach allows them to just come out, which is what the fish are doing really when they're nuzzling up against it. So yeah, pop them both in there. The original idea was just to sort of, I guess, let it happen, and naturally they thought they maybe would start chasing each other. Maybe it was because of they'd just been handled and moved, but that didn't really happen. So I watched them for a while just to see whether they would start to kind of naturally spawn with each other. And in the end, I did sort of want to set up the airline tubing that you might have seen before. So I set that up, all going across, and I knew that was important to make sure we had a good aeration if we did end up with some eggs. So I had a little air stone that I'd got before. I don't know, I think I got it free with an air pump a long time ago. So I had that laying around, popped that in there, and we're kind of good to go. But I noticed they weren't spawning, and naturally they weren't sort of chasing each other. Spawning mop had been removed at that point. Can't remember why I did that, but it's been removed. So I did have to try and hand spawn, which is something that I have done once before, and unfortunately, as you can see, I ended up with one egg. That is literally, there's one egg. I don't know how that happened. If maybe they'd all come out before in the pond. Maybe she wasn't producing eggs, but I was absolutely gutted. There was nothing left in her. So I had some options. The options were to not breed any fish at that moment, or I guess wait longer. But I chose the option to have a go, and I'm going to breed the calico fish, get them to spawn. So that was the female in the bowl. and that's the male in the bucket. So that's what I did. I thought, they're not the best example of Calico Joaquin. The colours have sort of faded over time, and yeah, they're just not a perfect variety, but I can still, or they're a lovely variety in my opinion, but not a perfect example of the variety. So I thought I would pop those both in the tank as well, and I really wanted to give it a go. It's something I've been waiting for and getting this room ready for. So, I thought it was worth having a go, even if it wasn't with the fish. I really wanted to get to spawn. But again, popping them in, nothing tended to happen. Maybe I could have left them for a lot longer and naturally they would have spawned. But I had done some hand spawning in the past before, so I knew how gentle you had to be, that kind of thing. And also I knew that it wasn't good for a fish to become egg bound, so I thought, my decision was that I was going to hand spawn these ones as well. That means I can make sure, I guess, there's enough milk compared to eggs, that kind of thing. So once that had happened, I also added some methylene blue. This is some advice I got. If you add some methylene blue, just a couple of drops in the water, it can spread around the tank and stop fungus from growing. So brilliant. There's just a chance to wait now, really. I had lots of seagulls watching the fish as they were spawning as well. Lucky I've got a net on there. Oh, and my pompon drying in the wind. So yeah, lots of seagulls watching the fish, but luckily we haven't had any go for them yet. So day one, I wanted to do a little record of how the fish looked. Maybe not every single day, but just sort of a record of what they look like. On day one, I was a bit unhappy, if I'm honest. I thought that maybe half of them weren't fertilized. Looking at it, it didn't look great in my opinion, but when I started to look a bit closer, you can tell actually from looking at the eggs, if they're clear, then they tend to be the ones that are going to hatch, they're going to be fertilized. If they've gone dark or white, and especially if they've gone like fluffy, that means they've grown fungus on them. But they're unfertilized ones if they're not transparent. So I spent quite a while zooming in with my phone trying to look and work out how many, but there you can see in the middle a lot of them are clumped up, and the problem with that is, I guess, if one of them starts to go bad, the others might go bad as well, really. But there is a mixture there of some that are see-through and some that aren't. Like I said, this is something I've never done before, but that was day one. So day two, again, I'm not going to throughout probably do all the days, but I just wanted to sort of see the first few days at least of progress. I did start to do some water changes. I did water changes at least once a day. It was about once a day, really. Yeah, I didn't have time for any more than that with working. But I did water changes, just trying to, and it wasn't really easy at this point, I guess, because the eggs are stuck to the base of the tank. So it was just siphoning that out onto the grass from the inside of the shed pond. And then I would literally just fill it up with fresh pond water. And then when the pond got too low, I would actually fill the pond back up. But I went for a bit closer view here. The dark bits next to the eggs are actually a shadow from a light. So just looking at the eggs themselves, you can see the difference between the clear ones and the not clear ones. And it looked to me like there was quite a lot that weren't good. A lot of bad eggs, really, in other words. But I did spend some time looking through, and I thought at the end of the day, if I get a handful, that's better than none, and I've given it a go. So day three. Working a little bit more, looking at the progress, and I started to notice in day three, and I didn't know whether it was because the tank wasn't very clean to start with, but I started to notice some dots, and I didn't know if I was seeing things, but dots, especially two dots next to each other, are actually the eyes of the fry. So I think we've got some close up footage in a minute, possibly, but you might be able to see that in some of them, the clear ones, there are a couple of little dots, and that is actually the first signs of the development. Now I want to say this tank was unheated. It was just in my shed. So continuing doing water changes, and the unheatedness will make a difference between males and females. It's something we might talk about again in the future, and development of fry. But when I did water changes, now and again I would add a bit more methylene blue, just to try and stop any of that fungus spreading. I'm not sure how much difference it makes really. Obviously this is my first time doing it, but it's something I'd heard that could help, and I wanted to give myself every chance of success. So looking at those, you can see there is some dirt in the tank anyway, but I think there's also some dots within the clear ones. I showed this footage to someone I knew who had bred lots before, and they said straight away, yeah, you've got loads of good ones there. So that made me feel good. But it was interesting watching. It's something that you may have done before yourself, but for me, it's something I'd never done. So learning this process, learning how they develop, was really interesting. This one area in particular, I thought really showed off those two eyes. You can see how there is two eyes in that centre, a bit of a movement on the top of the water there. But and also they say that when it starts to look like a smiley face, that is when they're ready to hatch, because that's the kind of tail, looks like the mouth, and the two eyes you can see in the kind of egg. So day 4 wasn't much difference there, just that maybe you could start to see that tail a little bit more. So and here, I don't know if you just saw that, but actually I saw a wiggle. So I slowed it down. So there we go. First sign of life, proper sign of life with movement. That got me excited for the progress. And then as I looked around, I could see that happening quite a lot. So I'd obviously done okay up until this point, keeping on top of the water changes, using the methylene blue, the fish spreading around the eggs to start with, I guess. Not as bad as I thought, but you can see how many eyes were there. This is the moment I started to panic slightly, thinking I'm going to have a lot of fish. But I guess that's kind of the process. You want as much to hatch as possible. So that's really everything for today. But if you want to see how these fish develop, please feel free to follow along and subscribe. It's my first time doing this, but if you want to see how it goes, hopefully I'll see you soon.